everybody here. To be here today is not an easy thing to do. It's a mixture of sweet feelings, of being able to honor a person who has done so much and been so much to so many people, but it's also a feeling of sadness that we'll truly miss this amazing, fantastic, wonderful, not like anyone else in this universe, gentleman, Rabbi Frederick Eisenberg. Standing here today, I feel on one hand it's almost a community service. It's the community, the Jewish community of Cleveland. It's the people of this neighborhood, people of this area, saying thank you to Rabbi Fred and his family for everything he has done for us. That choice that he would leave Boston and come to Cleveland and do all the things he did for us, that one decision made such a big difference in all of our lives. And I think one of the unique things about this temple, and has a lot to do with who Fred was it's not just a temple, it's a group of friends. It's a group of people who stick together. And normally you might say, oh, what's this Orthodox rabbi from North Park doing here? You know? But I think that's what Temple Israel and that Eisenbergs are to me. You know, he reminds all of us they're all family. We all stick together. We don't agree on most things, or many things, but we agree we need to disagree and be together and get through this life together. And I've been able to do that with Matt and with Fred, and I think it's a beautiful message for the world. You can still do a lot. You can be yourself. You cannot agree with everyone says, but you can still be very well liked and very loved and very respected and very remembered. And that's the thing about the Eisenbergs, is that they're very extraordinary, but they're not very ordinary. Each and every one of them does their own special thing in the most unique way. And I just wanted to read for you, there's this famous article I think a lot of us have read, where Rabbi Fred gave some of his views on life. And when he was asked about his career as a rabbi and how he looks at it, what he wants to accomplish, this is what he said. He says, I'm a retired rabbi who has survived long enough to be interesting. So you succeeded, Fred. You were interesting. The object was to make life as good for other people as I could, and since I was Jewish, I decided to be a rabbi. And I think that really says it all, is that he was a rabbi. He was a formal role to people, but mainly he was Fred. He was a friend. He was a person. He made a difference to people on a personal level. And he also requests that we think of him as simply decent. And again, I cannot agree more. He was very decent in everything that he did. But anyways, I'm not here to speak too much. One of the goals of the service is to be extraordinary, but in a compact fashion. Fred would want us to say funny things, interesting things, deep things, but say it quickly so we can move on with the other things we have to do in our lives. And also one of the ideas of the Jewish service is you don't have to get it all in today, right? This is just the beginning of the process of remembering. Shiva is a time of sitting and talking, and it's not just about us telling you stories about Fred. You all knew him. You all loved him. You all grew from him. So we want you to share your stories, and we want to talk together, on this day, as well, going forward. So today's service will not be boring. It will be interesting. It will be reverent and honorable. But also we hope you can smile and you can laugh and you can enjoy this special time about a dear, deep friend who has done so much for all of us today. I would like to start things off by welcoming to the pulpit our chazanit, his dear daughter Rachel. She will begin with a song and share some words.
Microphone. Is it on now? We're here to celebrate. Everybody here knows my father, right? That's why we're all here. And for 20 years, he's been telling me he wanted me to sing this song at his funeral. Because you know how Dad is, right? You got to plan everything. He's very decisive. So I'm going to try to get through this song for my dad. It's called Ushmor, and it means, oh, guard our coming and our going, that now and always we have life and peace. Spread over us your tabernacle of peace. ושמו זיתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, לחיים ולשלום. מעתה ועד עולם לחיים ולשלום, ושמו זיתנו ובואנו ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ושמו זיתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, לחיים ולשלום, ולשלום, ולשלום. So I have a question for everybody, because what is more Jewish than a question? How many of you ever remember my father riding in a convertible? Right? That was my dad. That was my dad riding in a convertible. And I remember when we used to be at Fairmount Temple, he used to ride his convertible, and he used to blast Jefferson Starship. Because my dad had a thing for Gracie Slick, like nobody's business. Gracie Slick, Joni Mitchell, Judy Collins, Blossom Dearie of all people, Lena Horne, all these women he made sure that I listened to. And there was a reason behind it, because these were the women who he listened to who brought him joy. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized why my dad was doing this. Why it was almost like he had me listen to a different album every day when I got home from school. But most of them were women singing. And it wasn't until later that I think I put it all together. My dad loved women's voices. When he was older, he was listening to Celtic women. Women's voices gave him more joy than anything, listening to them. Judy Collins, who wouldn't love listening to Judy Collins, right? And it occurred to me one day, it had to have been probably 20 years ago, my dad said something to me once. He said, you know, women can do everything that a man does, but they do it better. And this was my father. This was my father. And we all know it. We all know it. And we thank you for being here.
99.9% of the time they agree, and 0.1% they have to have special meetings to decide what to do about that 0.1%. So somehow with a rabbi as dynamic and gutsy as he called himself, as Rabbi Fred, it takes a good president to keep the shul in the right direction, not to create too much interest and controversy and have fewer stories in the public media. And so Ken was one of those people, Ken Boson, who really had a beautiful relationship with Fred, and they both help each other to be their best at what they did. He's going to tell you about how he knew him, how many years, how many decades they went back together. And so now I invite Ken to come up and say a few words.
Good afternoon. 51 years ago, in 1971, a young rabbi interviewed for a job at Fairmount Temple for the Young People's Congregation. I was on that search committee. And we had that interview. And we liked this young rabbi, but he was too old. He was 40. Our bylaws said we could only hire a rabbi who was 36 years of age or younger. So we changed the bylaws. What a wonderful decision that was. I remember as he grew, he left Fairmount. He was always my rabbi. I learned later on that he was going to be forming a new temple and that he would be the rabbi. It's all I needed to hear. I was there, going to meetings, sitting in the backyards on the grass with others who felt the same way back in the mid-'80s. He was my guy. The man I respected and admired. I was lucky enough to be president of this congregation when we moved into this building. What a wonderful feeling that was, to have him as our rabbi along with our own building. My relationship with him was something that I will always treasure. Not only was he my rabbi, but he was my friend. There were times when we would sit in his office and talk about things that had no relation to religion or the temple. In some ways, he was a mentor to me, giving me advice. I always remembered that if Rabbi Fred ever officiated at a wedding, he'd ask the bride and groom 4 questions to be answered and given to him without the other's knowledge. And if he married any of you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The last question he asked was, what will you bring to the marriage? In some ways, this congregation and Rabbi Fred had a marriage. So I thought, how would he have answered? And this is what I came up with. I think he would have said, I will be a teacher, a protector, a confidant, a boating instructor, a storyteller, an AV guy. For those of you who don't know, that's audio-visual. A leader, a sounding board, and most of all, a friend to all.
We all know how dear family was to Fred, and the fact that that his grandchildren will be here under a difficult time to share some words about him, would bring him tremendous nachas, knowing that you guys we love so much are going to share a few words and maybe a few jokes about him. So now I'm going to call upon grandson Teddy Eisenberg to share a few words.
Nothing ever prepares you for these moments. Nothing, of course, except Rabbi Fred. My grandfather was always ready with a joke, a pithy remark, a story to help set the mood and prepare you for the task at hand. His warmth, generosity of spirit, and love of music are all things that have served me as foundational inspirations as I've grown into adulthood and in my career. No matter what I was doing, he would call me at the most random times of day and ask, "How is the music?" And I would always have a different answer for him based on his boundless collection of records, tapes, and stereo equipment. He introduced me to not just the endless possibilities music could offer, but their power for building memories and for building community. I will always remember the twinkle in his eyes the first time he played me one of his favorites, Spanky and Our Gang, particularly Anything You Choose, the opening cut of that record, on his speakers, which we're now grateful to have. Or he kept asking me to find a copy of Dave Brubeck's Jazz Goes to College without telling me why. So when I finally did, telling me that he recorded portions of it back when he was studying to be a rabbi at Hebrew Union College, along with countless other concerts and shows. He probably left 2,000 different reel-to-reel tapes behind with recordings that he did. And that experience is something that my wife Shayla and we try to replicate with every musician and music lover that comes into our home, listening to records old and new on his speakers, and watching these musicians that have been performing for decades hear music that they love for the first time. So as you grieve, think about the music that brings a twinkle to your eye, touches your heart, and share it with those you love and hold dear, because through that, may my grandfather's memory be a blessing.
Hi, I'm Chana, or Hannah Bora, and I just want to tell one story. My grandpa always was very insistent that one of the four of us had to be a rabbi. Very insistent. And when I was a kid, I was very insistent that it was not going to be me. I told him over and over and over again. And it reached one point when I was in middle school, I think, where he came up to me and he was like, "It's gonna be you or Teddy." Those are the options at this point. And I was like, well, you better get ready for there to not be a rabbi because it's not gonna be me. And lo and behold, in a week, I moved to New York City to start rabbinical school. Which I know he was so happy about. And when I told him for the first time, he, like my mom was talking about how he was such a feminist, he was so excited that I got to be the first woman to do this in our family, which is really, it's incredible that I get the honor to be the first woman in our family to do this. And he was really the first guy in my life who made me believe that women can do anything. And that's really, really has guided my whole entire life. So hopefully one day I can be even half as good a rabbi as he was. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, Zichrona Livracha, Rabbi Fred Eisenberg.
All right. I'm Sarah Boro. I'm Rachel Eisenberg's carbon copy. We all know my papa, but my papa was so much more than a person, a grandfather, or a rabbi. Papa was a force of nature. Everything he did had power and intention, manifesting in a community of people in awe of him. As his youngest grandchild, I've heard countless stories of his impact, though I remember him differently. When I think of Papa, I think of waking up on snow days to donuts in the kitchen, telling Papa I won't eat them quite yet, and him responding in the most Papa way, "What, is it a kosher thing?" I think of Papa picking me and Chana up from camp or school and completely disregarding any line that was there. Instead, he would walk straight up to the front of the building and say, "I'm picking up the Boros, where are they?" Meanwhile, he would be parked illegally. My favorite Papa story is the story of the PT Cruiser, his car that he gave my sister and me after the family decided he shouldn't be driving anymore. One Friday night after temple, Papa asked a friend for a ride, and the next morning, when Chana went out to drive, the car wasn't there. Papa had secretly had a spare key to the car, and he took the car back without letting anybody know. I will always remember Papa as the crazy, unpredictable man, pressuring us to eat more sugar and less vegetables, doing absolutely whatever he wanted. And on a final note, Papa would really want somebody to recognize his love of frogs.
Before we introduce our last speaker, one of Rabbi Fred's favorite Psalms was Psalm 121. So I will share that with you, and we'll first say it in the Hebrew, and we'll say it in English. Shir lamalos esa enai el haharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im adinai, osei shemayim va'aretz. Al yitain lamot raglecha, al yanom shomrecha. Hine lo yanom v'lo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmar es nafshecha. Adonai yishmar tzeisecha, uvecha, me'ata v'ad olam. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you, he will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forever. So before introducing our last speaker, Rabbi Matt, I just want to say, like many people, when you see Rabbi Matt and you hear that there was a father who came before him in the synagogue, it's very confusing. You just don't hear about that so much these days. You know, a father-son shul team. And certainly you might have heard of it, but the son and the father are a little different. You know, he does this way and he does it that way. They complement, but they're not so similar. But just the idea of Rabbi Fred and Rabbi Matt doing the similar thing, focusing on the people, focusing on the love and the friendship between human beings, being very approachable and very lovable and very easygoing, being funny and charismatic, all as if they're cut from the same cloth, was quite remarkable. You know, and for me, besides it shows the close relationship between father and son, but it just shows also it's a good model. Hey, if Fred did it, Matt does it, and it goes pretty well. And it's probably a sign to me that it's a good model for the world, that we should all be like that. We should be rabbis, we should learn a lot, we should know a lot, we should teach, we should guide, but we got to be people. We got to be people that people can come to and share and talk to when they have problems. And that's what these gentlemen did for us, and that is what our community deeply appreciates. I'll just close with a thing that's a little lighter note, is that whenever I see Matt at funerals, he has an interesting tie. And he fulfills the Jewish mitzvah of consoling the mourners with the tie. You know, the tie's got the theme of the person that has passed away. And if he wears the right tie, it shows he gets the essence of that person. But sadly, this morning when I went into my closet, all I could find was this blue tie. So, Rabbi Matt, I'm really sorry. I would have gotten something with Jewish stars and Torah scrolls and people on my tie to show, you know, who you are and your family is as a form of condolences. So pretend that it's there. So now with a lot of honor and appreciation for doing a hard speech at a hard time, we call upon Matt Eisenberg to say a few words.
I'm not going to be looking at anybody. I'm just going to look at the back wall. If I thought more about this, I might have worn a frog tie. Sorry, Sarah. But I'm wearing a tie that has musical instruments on it, and it has a clarinet on it. My father played clarinet when he was younger. We remember him standing in front of the speakers, listening to music, and either playing the clarinet or the saxophone, or just conducting the music. When my father retired and I succeeded him, I received a phone call from a colleague of mine whose name is not important, because he called to ask me, what's it like to work with your father? And I said, well, my father retired, and he handed me the keys, and he said, I'll be on the boat, and, call me if you need me. And so this is the way it used to be, where you had a pager, right? And, you weren't in touch with everybody all the time. And then I asked this colleague of mine, so who else are you calling? And he said, just you. You guys are the only ones in the whole reform movement. And so it is, it's quite a mantle of honor and responsibility. I'd just like to dispel one myth about my father. He never had a motorcycle. I cannot tell you how many people I meet that tell me, like the Darrens, I think, they had a death in the family, and my dad came over, as Rabbi should, at all hours of the day and night whenever you call the rabbi, and they tell me they remember my father driving over on a motorcycle. And Ephraim Maharon, the grandson, is like saying to me, what, was it a Harley or something? I mean, it was literally a moped, and so it had an engine that you dropped on. John Milgram knows this. John and I used to ride. We had two mopeds, two Solexes. It was a Solex. It was made in France, and it had a little wheel. You dropped it down onto the front wheel of the bicycle, and you could maybe get 25 miles an hour, but you could get 50 miles per quart. I mean, you get 200 miles a gallon on this thing. And that is what my dad rode over there, although people tell me it was a motorcycle. They swear it was a motorcycle. For years, I've stopped trying to correct people, but this is probably my final correction, so I'm giving it. He rode a Solex, which is also very cool. In all of the things that have been said about Rabbi Fred and the founding of this congregation, just to conclude with this, he told a few people, when you ask him, why did you decide you wanted to become a rabbi? And if you want to become a rabbi, this is a good thing to say in your interview. You want to help alleviate pain for other people. And so it's not easy to do when you're a rabbi, but it's easier to do when you're not standing in the shoes of a mourner, when you are helping to alleviate others' pain. And that is one of the things that he wanted to do when he became a rabbi. And you can do that through music, through boats, through motorcycles. You can do it through almost anything, just to serve God's people and to serve God and to help alleviate pain. So in the pain that some of us are feeling more keenly than others, but all of us are feeling, there's an opportunity to just help other people. This is key for us. Whenever you're feeling bad and whenever you're feeling blue or down, if you help other people, whether it doesn't matter, race, religion, creed, color, it just doesn't matter. If you help other people, it gets you out of your own pain and your own mourning just a little bit, and it helps you to make God's world just a better place a little bit. So Friday night after services, this won't be sacrilege. Akiva is a great rabbi. He does hospice. So when I go on vacation, he covers for me, and when he goes on vacation, I cover for him. I never thought of him as an Orthodox rabbi. I just thought of him as a rabbi. Is that okay? It's out of the bag. You're Orthodox. We didn't know. But whenever you are feeling bad and blue and down, just help other people, And Friday night after services, I'll be driving the PB&J van. I know it seems a little off, but you know, when we're making PB&J sandwiches after services and delivering them to the homeless in the city of Cleveland, as we've been doing for about 15 years, it is fulfilling and it's comforting. And I know that my dad would dig driving around in a van that's got, you know, graffiti written on the side, and we're doing that kind of stuff. So just help other people with each and every opportunity. And we're going to do this in my dad's loving memory, and we're going to do it in honor of our mom. They would have been married 65 years on September 1st. I would give Mom a tremendous amount of credit for having not killed him many times over the course of the 65 years. Maimonides, a Jewish philosopher, Kendra Josephitz knows Maimonides very well. He used to say, Hamevin Yavin, those who understand, understand. So in my family, those who understand these things about my dad, believe me, they understand. And the rest of you, it's just a beautiful secret. You don't have to know anything. But Mom, thank you for allowing Dad to live this long. Amen.
Just a minute before Cantor Larry shares with us the Kalmali Rachamim, I just want to finish up with what Matt was saying about kindness. And certainly kindness is for the world, but kindness starts at home. And the kindness that the Eisenberg showed for Fred is remarkable. You know, starting with Helen, you know, Helen was the most devoted wife to him. And I saw you guys in action at Stone Gardens. And the way you took care of him and you watched over him, you know, to see two people, you know, up in years, and the one watches the other get out of the elevator safely and make sure that they're safe. And there were a couple times when Helen wanted to come to services because it was Shabbos, and we got to do Shabbos, even if things are rough. But you would see in her face it was not right. Fred wasn't there. Fred wasn't feeling well. And if Fred wasn't well, Helen wasn't well, you know, and they really went through life together. One of my most favorite stories is a quick story, is that a husband and wife went to the doctor, and the doctor asked them, "What's wrong?" And he looks at the wife and says, "What's wrong? What brought you to the doctor today?" And the husband says, "Our foot hurts." And so that is the Fred-Helen combination in a nutshell. But the love that Helen had for Fred was definitely passed on to see Matt, you know, to see all of the descendants, the children and the grandchildren, how devoted they were. And I'm sorry I didn't visit more, but you guys were always there. And it was not an easy illness, not an easy road, but you kept him going. You kept his spirits elevated. You gave him hope. And he always saw the world as a good place. He always was hopeful, but that was because he was surrounded with people who were hopeful and were good. And that's what you guys did so beautifully. And very lastly, just to take what Matt is saying, we say in our liturgy, we say, Olam chesed yibane. We say the world was created with kindness. So what does that teach us? That when God created the world, he did a kindness because no one else was around. He didn't have to do it because so-and-so would notice the kindness. He didn't do it because so-and-so would thank him. He didn't owe anyone. God just created the world because he wanted to create the world for us. And that's the pure idea of a kindness that you don't do it for any ulterior motives. You only do it because it's the right thing to do. And that, like Matt said, is the ultimate comfort. The ultimate consolation is life doesn't end because kindness and love and caring for human beings is forever. We say l'dor v'dor l'netzach netzachim, from generation to generation. We don't live forever. We only live one generation. But if we can figure out a way to make that next generation greater than we were, we can get l'netzach netzachim, we get eternity. And Fred figured that out. He figured out how to get the spark, the secret of life. He passed it on to Matt. He passed it on to his other children. And they are passing on to the next children. So God willing, we have nothing to worry about. We will miss him. But his memory will go from eternity to eternity. And his memory should truly be for a blessing. Just before Cantor comes and sings the Kamali for us, just wanted to announce that the family will observe the Shiva, here at Temple Israel Ner Tamid. They got this God Hashgacha Pratis tent. Somehow it arrived just in time.
We ordered it
2 months ago, okay. All right, some heavenly forces moved the delivery truck back a little bit. So that's where the Shiva will be occurring, I think, or it'll be indoors, I'm not sure. Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m., and there'll be a minyan at 7:30 p.m. There will be a Friday minyan at 3 p.m., and the peanut butter jelly thing. And that's optional, right? You don't have to. If you come to services, you can choose to deliver sandwiches or not. And then Sunday through Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., our Shiva is continuing, and there's a minyan also at 7:30 p.m. Contributions in memory of Fred are suggested to the Rabbi Fred Eisenberg Music Fund in care of Temple Israel Ner Tamid. So if everyone could please rise, we're going to recite the Kamali Rachamim, and then people are going to grab their coats and things, and we're going to stay standing, and then we're going to escort the deceased out of the room. The casket will go in the front, family will file in behind the casket, then everyone else will file in behind the family, and we'll walk behind the casket as it goes outward towards the cars. And then if you're going to be in the procession, please join us in the procession to the cemetery, where we'll be going immediately afterwards. Yeah, so he's Ephraim, Aaron, Ben Moshe, Halevi, and Vered is his wife. Thank you.
I only wanted to say that I had something special that I shared with Rabbi Fred too, and that is that both of us before Rosh Hashanah would listen to the same performance of the Verdi Requiem conducted by Arturo Toscanini. Now that's a very unusual thing to share. El Molei Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanefei HaShechina B'mahalot Kedoshim Utahorim Kizahar Harakia Mazehirim Et Nishmat Ephraim Aharon Ben Moshe Halevi Viveret Sheolach Liolamo Bavur Shenodavim Tzedakah Biad Haskarat Nishmato Biganeiden Menuchato Lochein Bal HaRachamim Yasirehu B'Seiter Kinafov Li'olamim V'Yitzrar B'Tzirar HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Nachaloto V'Yanuach Al Mishkavo B'Shalom V'Nomar Amen.
O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament. For the soul of our most beloved Ephraim Aaron, the son of Moshe, the Levite, and Vered, who has gone into his world, and for whom we pray. May his resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy shelter him in the shelter of his wings for all eternity. May he bind his soul in the bonds of life. God is his heritage, and may he repose in peace on his resting place. And we say together, Amen. So we're going to have the pallbearers please come forward, if everyone can remain standing. And then, like I said, we will escort from behind the casket.